are involved with. And the other statistic that was quite fascinating were the demographics and how the demographics actually have shifted between 2019 and current times. You know, from the younger age group to now, we're dealing with 40 years old to 59 years old in terms of these incidences. So the importance is great data that we're collecting. How will we analyze it going forward? So your meeting will be quite helpful.
Yes, and even from that point, cultural. So we have, organizations like Humwee that are out there that deal with, IPV in their community. And we know, just kind of through our own analytics or just even looking at it, that there's certain different groups, certain parts of the population that are being underreported to us. So it's how do we use that data and what are the solutions that we come up with so that we can offer, equitable resources to everybody, even and getting past those barriers of why we're not being able to get in there.
Deputy Wilkie, I just want to add something on to what Jeff was talking about. So within the CSWB model, you'll see that there's the data analytics and decision support, and that was infused into the model to understand with 2 full-time epidemiologists to actually analyze that data. So the risk tracking database started in 2013, and really we've been trying to get 35 agencies to kind of collate their data and dump it into the same database, and then be able to rinse it and have really accurate data to drive decisions. So that helps identify our action tables, our priorities at a regional level, and it also helps with harm reduction strategies, grant applications, and those things. So when you talk about tangibles or takeaways, that's the true value of that data analytics, because it helps us understand what our true issues are, and then we guide our resources towards either mitigating the risks or enhancing certain programming.
It's so important as our population continues to grow as well.
Fred, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think it's great that we're trying to integrate the information and the services. I mean, this is just outstanding, and all in less than a decade, a huge transformational change. We're tracking who's coming into the pipeline. We're tracking activity levels in the pipeline. I think in order to evaluate success, we need to be tracking what's at the end of the pipeline. What's happening with with these cases? Is this working, or is it creating activity? Right? What's happening to that victim of that part of violence? For instance, we have a system to track the offenders. What's happening? How are they? Is their homelessness solved? That's right. Quite frankly, are they prepared to avoid a repeat situation, to be re-victimized, or the mental health aspect, if that's the dominant risk factor? I mean, most are multiple. This is what makes it complex, right? But what we're not seeing in the analytics yet is what's coming out of the pipeline, and that's how we can really measure the success of the integrated human ecosystem approach. That makes sense. I don't know how we get there, but I think we need to look at the end state at some stage and walk it back from there.
If I could be so bold, there is a challenge at the end of that being the court system that creates a element that is uncontrolled and at times challenging for us and for survivors of IPV and the like. I do get your point.
Thank God Halton Police Service is up to that challenge.
Yep.
Thank you, Fred. Anything further on CSWB? Kurt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just wanted to add to the discussion that I think what Halton is trying to do is a best practice, for sure. And I don't think it's happening in enough communities, quite frankly. Trying to bring 25 or 30 people to the table and get everybody rowing in the same direction is a challenge. And I think probably there's a need for more rowing before we get to the outcome stage, maybe. But I think we can take we can take stock of that things are going in the right direction, for sure. And I applaud the service for doing what's happening and leading it, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief.
Yeah, I just want to make one other comment because we make a lot of observations and I think board members need to as well. And over the last couple of years, there's been this sort of talk of defund the police, which has never really been a Halton defund the police issue per se, but it's around us and it's in other countries very close to us and large cities. And sometimes you sit back and the deputies and I talk about this and you wonder why. And sometimes we think it is partly because the police are seen dealing with mental health. Police didn't cause mental health, but they're going on mental health calls. Police are dealing with addictions and alcohol and drug overdoses. They're not causing the addictions, but they're going to all those calls. And the police aren't causing homelessness, but they're dealing with people who are homeless. And I think that's where part of that narrative comes from, is this misunderstanding of cause and effect. And we're dealing with issues. In fact, when you look at community safety and well-being here in the larger picture of Halton, there's millions of dollars being spent on homelessness. There's multi-millions of dollars being spent on addictions, mental health. So when you look at that bigger picture, it's not take the money from the police. No one says take the money from the paramedics or the fire departments because they don't deal with mental health, addictions, and homelessness. But the money is already there. It's about making sure it's better spent in all those different areas. And I think that's the bigger narrative that, as Ingrid was saying, when we're dealing with homelessness being a big issue here in Halton, not necessarily a police issue. Lots of resources going into it already, probably not enough, but it's not taking from one to pay the other. It's making sure it's done in the most effective ways. Just wanted to make that comment while we're talking about all these different pieces of the puzzle.
I just want to add one further little bit of, reselling the concept. I've served at the region for, I mentioned earlier, 22 years. And when I first got to the region, one of my first commitments was I chaired health and social services, I think in my second year, and stuck with that for a good part of my earlier tenure. I was really shocked at the silos that existed at the time, and the anecdotal information upon which a lot of agencies used in order to deliver resources. It was not a lot of data. There was not a lot of, and the data that was there was not necessarily really high quality data. So we weren't really able to fully understand the enormity, or for that matter, the lack of a problem in some cases where maybe they didn't really exist and we should have been focusing on something else. I remember when I first heard of this concept, I think it was Churchill. Was it Churchill, Manitoba? Is that Fred? Was the first concept with Churchill? St. Albert. St. Albert, yeah. I remember hearing about this concept at AMO more than a decade ago, and it was like, for me, it was a wake-up call that this is what we needed in, not just in policing, but in community services, because it breaks down those silos and it gets people together and they can actually have those conversations. Yeah, policing service doesn't cause homelessness, it doesn't cause poverty, it doesn't cause those things, but it can certainly be a big contributor to help to resolve some of those things if they're at the table and having that conversation. Up until a decade or so ago, largely the police were reactionary. They reacted to circumstances. They weren't part of the proactive resources to stem the issues. So the small part that I've played in this over the years, I'm certainly proud of, and I'm immensely proud of our service for what they've been able to contribute, as well as our team at Halton Region. It's been nothing short of miraculous, and I think they've got a lot. There's a lot more yet to come. I happen to be married to somebody that's involved in this sector, and she has a program that's about to be vetted through the program, which is a hub-based model to deal with harm reduction in an area of Halton where there's an extraordinary amount of harm reduction. And that one example I'm watching come together is literally the piecing together of all the different agencies that touch this very complex issue of drug abuse and sex trades and all those sorts of things, and everybody putting their 2 cents worth into developing a program that will hopefully be supported by the table to support. I guess
unified way. So my hat's off to the program, and I think as a board we should spend as much time as we can to learn more about this and the benefits and support it to the best of our ability. So sorry for that commercial plug, but I thought it was worth adding to this comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm listening to everyone. I think I just wanted to concur with the chief with regards to the responsibility, and the other thing is the expectation. The expectation from the board in that we advise the partners, we convey information to the partners, and that we do that in a timely fashion, and that's the expectation, rather than the expectation of overcoming those issues altogether. I do understand whenever you're trying to, solve a complex problem such as this, it's not something that one party can actually do, and it will require all stakeholders. But I do want to mention the fact that if the police service is going to, spend resources with partners, then I would like to see resources, those partners really coming back to the table with, outcomes, real outcomes. And if those are not coming back, I think those are the things that we need to discuss at this table. And so when you mention 30 different stakeholders, that is beyond, comprehension here, in my opinion. So I think it's important to say that we're doing a great job of conveying and having an open dialogue and free form of information between these partners, but I think we need to be very cognizant of the resources that we provide to the service. And I think that's really correct, that we need to know what our mandate is and how we fulfill that mandate. And whether we, to make sure that we don't, we actually support and convey that information rather than, spend excess resources and not getting anything out of this relationship. So I think that's what I wanted to convey. That's an important touch point, but it's at the same time we want to make sure there's something happening with that. And that's all I wanted to mention.
Thank you, Nan. Chief?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much, to your point, it's very much the partnership and the stakeholder relationships that we have. And a lot of what we do with them, I guess we would call donations in kind, because it's our resource, our staff time, who are involved in committees and on the action tables, not the police services board or the police service actually investing money in the regional homeless program. And at the end of the day, I mean, what comes out the other end of that pipe might depend how big the pipe is. So the region of Halton could build 1,000 new low-cost housing units, and homelessness could double in the next 10 years because prices have gone up so much and so many other things have happened. So it's just that cause and effect thing a few years ago, fentanyl wasn't here. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have so many overdoses except heroin and a few other things, but now it's now fentanyl, and there's apparently a stronger fentanyl version that's out there now, which is scary. So we monitor, it's a changing environment to look at what the end is, right? But it's those partnerships and the dialogue and making sure that the right people are at those tables to try to discuss it. And then at the end of the day, some of that is regional, provincial, federal funding, especially in the homelessness sort of area, or mental health and addictions. So we're just one part of that, an important part though.
Well, I hear you. I think time is money.
Yeah.
Time is money, and time for all the staff to other programs and internally. I mean, we have other core programs we want to ensure that staff spend time in. But I mean, right now at this point, we don't know how much time we're spending in other activities, but these are the things that we have to be really cognizant of. If we don't get results from our stakeholders and partnerships, we need to convey those kind of things.
So I'm hoping maybe this will be less common, I don't know, because it seems to be a topic everyone wants to get a piece of, but I will state that your comments are very appropriate, obviously, for Police Services Board. We're the custodians of the taxpayers' pocketbook when it comes to policing, and your comments line up exactly with what Fred was saying in terms of actually being able to measure the outcomes instead of the activity. So I think that those are very good points. And one of the benefits, of course, of the table is to actually be able to achieve that. Whereas before, as I mentioned before, everybody used to work in silos, and it was really very hard to determine what outcomes were because people weren't necessarily even talking to each other. Or when they were talking to each other, they were largely fighting for resources or sometimes had competing, not from an evildoer's perspective, but from the perspective of everybody thinking they were doing the right thing as opposed to coordinating resources. The one thing that I always keep in mind, as a person with several different hats on in our community when it comes to the public purse, and this is something it's intuitive, but I remind myself all the time is there's one taxpayer. And, whether the dollar is spent here or it's spent with public housing or it's spent with one of the other departments, it's still a tax dollar. And we can create greater value for the dollar by being more, what's the word I'm looking for, strategic with those resources. And by having the action table and our community safety plan, that allows us to really put a fine edge on our planning and on the deployment of resources. But you're absolutely right. There needs to be results, measurable, demonstrable results, and I think anecdotally, I'm certainly seeing them in our community already. But to Fred's point and to yours, we need to be able to, as a board responsible for that purse, we need to be able to see that we're getting value for the dollar, both the resources as well as dollars and cents. But I'm convinced that this is the right way to go, and we'll really have. I don't know what the analysts are suggesting, but I think that there's probably some point at which we'll be able to see a truly clear definition of what the return on investment is. I'm not sure when that comes, but certainly you can see pieces of it already developing, certainly in the quality of life of some individuals and some groups in our community. So is there anybody else who wants a piece of this? Nope. Okay. So let's receive the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan report, 3.2. Can I get a motion for that, please? Nav, thank you very much. Kurt, thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Let's go to 3.3, Financial Report and Forecast, first quarter 2022. I think that was separated, was it? Do I have any separations for that? Comments? Can I get a motion to receive, please? Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Ingrid. Comments, questions? Pat, did you have a comment or question? I'm sorry, I only saw you at the last moment. Nope, okay. All in favor? That's carried, thank you. 3.4, the semi-annual grant agreement execution report. Comments, questions? Nobody on Zoom? Can I get a motion to receive this, please? Maybe somebody on Zoom. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Clark. Any comments or questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We do not have any discussion items, and I'll go to operational verbal updates, and we'll start with the chief to see if he's got anything for us.
Through the chair, the only one I wanted to mention for the board, if you're not already aware, is congratulations to Superintendent Derek Davis, who competed for and will become the chief of the Sarnia Police, I believe June 1st. So congratulations to Derek, and we're sorry for him career-wise, and we wish him all the best.
Any questions from the board to our chiefs? Well, Mike,
we're taking over east and west.
I'm sorry?
We're taking over east and west now.
Absolutely. I was going to say that, I'm sorry, Clark has a comment or a question. Or maybe both. Or maybe just a story.
Chair, can you hear me okay now?
You perfectly.
Okay, good. It was just thanks to all the members of the service on the weekend who were responding to the numerous calls about branches being down and directing traffic and just keeping people away from wires that may have fallen and roads that were blocked off. So I did have a lot of compliments from people on how even if it may not have been on wires, they were still stopping to make sure doing wellness checks, making sure people were okay and making sure that they didn't need other services. So just a thanks through the chief to all the members of the service who were on the weekend, who were out dealing with all the numerous trees, lines, and barbecues and covers and kiddie pools that were flying around for a few minutes about 1 o'clock on Saturday.
I will echo that, except you couldn't save my low voltage lighting from my fences. They're gone.
We had, well, I know in Milton and Halton Hills, one point that afternoon, we had been to 88 calls. We had dozens still waiting, and we had an individual life-threatening injuries in Oakville that was actually hit by and pinned by a tree, and there's damage everywhere across Halton. We may be luckier than some other jurisdictions, but Jeff has a picture he'll show after the meeting to some people, cottage country, but yeah, it was quite the storm.
Quite the story. I believe there were 5 fatalities province-wide. Was that the latest?
I think they were 8 or 10.
Oh my goodness, there were 8 or 10. That's quite the storm. I know my brother from British Columbia was in touch with me, making sure I was okay, because I guess the news was just quite spread across the country like wildfire. Anything further? I just want to add my congratulations to Superintendent Davis as well. I mentioned and congratulated him on social media on behalf of the board. It's always great to see our people move out and across the province and spread some of that Halton experience and quality policing to other jurisdictions as well. So congratulations on his new responsibility, and congratulations to the people of the city of Sarnia for getting one of Halton's finest. So with that, members of the board, I'll move on to the Public Information Action Registry. I'll draw your attention to that report. 3 of the items are still on time. We have one to be arranged, which is 8.1 CGO. Do you have any update on that?
No, we haven't scheduled the workshops yet. Just did the presentations. We're still trying to get the next workshop organized. There's a board-only discussion item about that. And we'll be taking the first one off that list. Okay, Grant? It's already in the calendar now.
Excellent. Thank you. Chief?
Jeff, sorry, Mr. Chair, just before we probably break for confidential, we do have our ministry representative here, representing our representative, because our representative is running in the provincial election down in the Essex area, but we have Dwayne here if there was any updates.
Dwayne? No updates. Everything's status quo right now. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us today. It's nice to see you in person. Same here. Members of the board, I do need a motion to receive the action registry as circulated. Thank you, Kurt. Seconded by. Let's do a split vote here. Don, there we go. One Zoom, one in person. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? That's received. Thank you. Members of the board, you are in receipt of your public correspondence, which was circulated to you through Dillatrust. Do you wish to raise any items from the public correspondence registry? Can I get a motion to receive those, please? Thank you, Ingrid. Seconded by Pav. Thank you very much. Comments, questions? All in favor? And those items are received. Members of the board, any new business to bring before the board today? Not seeing anybody in Zoom land, nobody here in the boardroom, so I will move on to a motion to go into closed session to start our confidential portion of the meeting. Moved by Kurt, seconded by, can I get a seconder please? Thank you, Don. All in favor? That is carried. We will move into public session. Before we do that, we want to say thank you to those who did tune in to us on social media today, through YouTube or whatever means you did to observe our meeting today. We do appreciate your time and your interest, and we look forward, as always, to your feedback. This is your police board, and we want to make sure that you have access to the decisions that are being made on a timely basis. So until next time, don't forget to tune in again next month for our next board meeting. Members of the board, we are moving into closed session. I will recess this meeting until 10:40 in order to arrange for that session. Thank you to staff who are going to be departing. and we are now recessed.
No, you don't get to go.